Good morning. Good morning. On my clock, it's 1 minute to the hour. All right. Welcome everyone from wherever you are coming in from, whether you're coming in from Australia, New Zealand, or all the way to our friends in India, including those who are coming in from the north, from Japan, Korea, even from China. Right. You might be connecting to this particular Tech Talk session, and this is our inaugural, right? Our first of many to come. In fact, we have 3 sessions planned for you in total. All right. So this being the first. All right. Welcome to Tech Talk Asia. All right. In this particular community-driven Tech Talk, if you want, we have some exciting content for you. In fact, a lot of the content that we have put together, right, brings us, if you want, directly the messages and the exciting announcements which were shared during the Microsoft Ignite event around the middle of October, right? So that wasn't so long ago when we were able, all right, to hear directly from the from our leaders like Satya Nadella and so forth, right, in terms of where the technology is heading. All right. And we wanted to give you those direct information. All right. So without further ado, let's get started. All right. I'm just trying to click through the screen to make sure that we are on time. Okay. Now, the schedule for this series of Tech Talks, if you want, starts with today, right? Being December the 9th. All right. So session number 1, we will bring to you hot out the oven if you want. If you haven't been following the Microsoft Ignite 2022, the announcements and the excitements that was brought forward to us, right, around the Microsoft Software Assurance benefits, Azure Arc management improvements, especially around what is available through the Azure Marketplace. And of course, we also wanted to give you a deep understanding or even just a scratch on the surface because there's so much to share, right? The latest Windows Admin Center 22.11, which is currently in preview. And of course, the announcement also included Azure Stack HCI 22H2, which is the latest version. All right. So as the announcement was made in October, that new version of Azure Stack HCI was also made available. My name is Noel. I'll be taking you through, all right, and a little bit about my background, but it's not so important really. What is probably more important is the team that is put together to support you. Obviously, the team is expanding. All right. But today, specifically, we have a few of us in here to take you through to the end. Now, different individuals in the team will be doing different things. Some of them, you may not hear them speak at all, but trust me, they're busy making sure that this particular Tech Talk is successful, right? But Ko and I will be taking you through from the slides, from the content, all the way to the demos and back. So you see Ko and I handing to each other like a baton, if you want, in a 4x100 relay race. All right. And important thing is, in this announcement, we wanted to give you a overall view, right? Starting with the Ignite 2022 announcement excitement around Windows Server Data Center with software assurance. And we also wanted to make sure that you get to understand the reliability and scalability capabilities of 22H2, which is the latest, greatest version of Azure Stack HCI OS. As mentioned, Arc has been significantly improved. Still in preview, we have the ability to use the Azure Marketplace templates if you want from deployment perspective. Of course, we also know that the Azure Kubernetes Service, which is a hot area that many of our partners and customers are using, right, allows them to deploy in an elastic and scalable manner containers, both Windows and Linux containers. Now, of course, we also wanted to showcase a little bit about another PaaS, Azure PaaS service called Azure Virtual Desktop, right? So these are the areas that we wanted to talk about. So it's important to note that all of these will be featured in this 1-hour session, okay? But obviously, we will have to go through them quite quickly so that we can fit everything in, right? So this is an exciting hour for you that we put together. This is the website for Microsoft Hybrid User Group. So hopefully you can get your phone out, scan the QR code, join us so that you be given regular updates and all these happenings that is being prepared and shared with you, because we want to help you learn, if possible, in a structured manner, right, in an exciting way. So that said, we believe that inspiring people is an important part of building the community, but not limited to that. We want to ignite your passion, right, and therefore help you take off. If anything, in a simple 3, 2, 1, you take off together with us. And we wanted to use this opportunity to share with you how we are going to do that today. Now, many of us in the end user environment are still with traditional data centers. It doesn't mean it's bad. It just means that a lot of times the application and infrastructure are very tightly coupled, right? And a lot of times you have expensive integrated hardware, and many a time they are also siloed. Okay, so the processes and configurations were developed for those specific scenarios. But we've seen increasingly over the last 10 years, many customers have taken the journey to cloud. Okay, and many of them have gone down the path of adopting Azure. But that said, all right, a lot of the services in Azure and so forth have now been brought down to a hybrid motion, as we want to call it. So customers have the ability from an on-prem to burst into cloud. And for those workloads that it makes sense, cost-effective, and allows them to scale elastically and so forth, they persisted those workloads in the cloud, in Azure, meaning they left it there and they continue to use it. And from time to time, they may even collect some of those, but ultimately, they have found a very good way to have both on-premise technology and Azure cloud technology coexisting. So these are important capabilities we believe that many of you who have joined us on this particular session will be able to benefit. And those of you who are from the partner space, from the distributed space, you can use this message to go out and reach out to customers and enrich them. Right? Ability to burst, to persist, all right, and so forth are really important part of transforming, if you want. IT today needs to transform. So that's why a couple of months ago, back in July, we had Satya Nadella, the chairman and CEO of Microsoft, right? Through that, inspired a lot of partners. We wanted to use that opportunity to also highlight to you, if you are a partner, to still connect to the Microsoft Inspire website and feed off the on-demand content that they have preciously put together for you. Like I mentioned in October, just a couple of months ago, we had Ignite. In Ignite, and it's obvious not too late because you can still sign up and be able to use the on-demand content and be able to see that there were some significant announcements. 3 particularly that I wanted to highlight to you. One is for software assurance perspective. Windows Server Data Center with software assurance. I won't let the cat out of the bag for now, but I wanted to highlight to you that there are some significant value that customers who have software assurance today can benefit. Now, the second is the Arc integration with Azure Marketplace. And thirdly, the new version of Azure HCI OS, which is 22H2. So all of these put together provide some powerful capabilities for customers and partners to help turn on those. And Microsoft wanted to reward customers who have software assurance, be able to do it for free. Now, part of the reward obviously is an ongoing ability to upgrade to new versions. So as you can see with Azure HCI OS, although we are now at 22H2 that was released in October this year, we actually preceded that with 2 other versions going as far back as December 2020. About less than a year later, we had the 21H2, and recently we got the 22H2. So this approach is what we call the cloud rhythm, if you want. But that said, right, many of our customers actually buy OEM or ROK Windows Server. Okay, there are multiple benefits, and of course, not limited to these 5, right? But these are the 5 key benefits that many customers buy ROK or OEM licenses with Windows Server. 1, simplest and most cost-effective license for many customers, especially SMB customers. 2, Software is pre-tested, optimized specifically for hardware supported by HP, Dell, Lenovo, and all of our different OEMs. And of course, the one-stop shop, the customers and partners, right, getting the whole package together, and even the warranty to go with that as well. And the fact that they're pre-tested and so forth makes it easy for them to get started without any trouble. And the good news to it also is it's perpetual. That means there's no ongoing payment that they need to make. Now, that said, some customers find that with the savings that they get with OEM ROK licensing, it gave them an impetus, if you want, to add on software assurance, because by adding software assurance to it, they get multiple benefits. So I just wanted to highlight to you, these are some of the benefits, right? And I found through talking to customers and helping them over the course of the last 20 plus years, right? Many of them finds that the software assurance give them the licensing for their DR environment to be highly cost effective. And they don't have to worry about how many systems they set up on the other side and so forth. And of course, the other one is reassignment rights, the ability to transfer the license when they want to repurpose the license for something else. And thirdly, support. Who doesn't need support? From time to time, all of us need support. And number 4, new version rights. That means customers entitled to new version. If they bought Windows Server Data Center with software assurance with 2019, they can get 2020 last year onwards, and even the next version if it falls within the agreement period. Not limited to that, obviously the Azure Hybrid Benefit. And that's probably the most important piece in this announcement. Azure Hybrid Benefit comes in 3 folios. One, if you move your Windows Server license into Azure, and that's what some customers has advantage of. 2, with that software assurance type Windows Server 2022 Data Center, or even some of the previous versions, they get free zero cost Azure HCI host fee. And the per core per month licensing gets 0 from 10 US per physical core per month becomes 0 core per month. Third, they get AKS, Azure Kubernetes Service, for free as well, running on this platform. So isn't that exciting, right? Who don't need free stuff, right? Everyone gets excited and enjoy free stuff. So the first being moving the Windows Server in Azure. That's one. Okay. 2, HCI hosting becomes free, simply because the customer has Windows Server Data Center. 3, before we go to 3, and I know you were thinking, oh, let's go into 3, but actually, I want to show you very quickly how easy it is from the Azure portal to be able to take advantage of this. Okay, so you can see that in the configuration setting, I have this option that says Azure Hybrid Benefit. All I have to do is click on the Activate button, right? And when I go there, it will give me a summary of the Azure HCI OS configuration, like in this case, 4 physical cores. And you notice the price that is in that area has gone to 0. Okay, so that's how Microsoft is helping customers save money, right? Because they have invested earlier on with software assurance for their Windows Server Data Center. So this benefit, if you want, could truly be taken to new heights by taking on AKS together with Azure HCI. So all of these are exciting things that customers can do. Now, for those of you who are partners in the session, I want you to reach out to your customers if they happen to fall into these categories, like the enterprise businesses or the mid-sized businesses. Chances are they do have software assurance. Go in there, help them. And we discovered that customers from these 4 industries typically do have it, especially financial services and healthcare. Some larger manufacturing as well, and definitely some of the larger retails organizations have that capability. And this is where we see that these industries fit into what we call the basic needs under the Maslow hierarchy of needs. Now, why is this important? Because sometimes in our quest to help our customers, we may not be focused or zoomed in on some of these industries. So I wanted to use this opportunity to guide you. But not limited to that. We may have customers coming in from the government space, from the enterprise, corporate, mid-market, and so forth. And in the reverse priority, if you want, the people from the bottom, the SMB may not have software assurance, but if you go from the top down, government, enterprise, corporate, they, chances are, will have it. And don't forget, we have AKS for free as well. And that's exciting days. Why? Because we're seeing increasing amount of customers deploying AKS. And even in a single node scenario, they have AKS Lite. So that AKS. To summarize the benefit, if you want, take your workload into Azure. That's option number one. Option number two, all right, you have the host fee for free. And because of Windows Server Data Center, you get the unlimited Windows Server Guest VM. And of course, if you take advantage of the AKS, you get that free. And if you combine 2 and 3 together, you get maximum benefit with your Azure Hybrid benefit. For AKS on Azure HCI, right? With the unlimited Windows Server Guest VMs, that means the VMs running Windows Server inside, you get AKS, Azure Kubernetes for free. And on top of that, the base infrastructure with Azure HCI, host OS, also totally free. Amazing, right? So I want to give it a tick for every layer, and hopefully customers who are already with Windows Server Data Center and software assurance, you get to benefit that. So that said, this summarizes those three, and I want you to be excited. And let's look at the next bit about Azure Arc. Now, those of you who are new to Azure Arc, when we released that back in 2017, the dream and the vision of Azure Arc was to bring Azure services and management to any infrastructure, regardless of whether it's an on-premise environment or is on Azure or even into a multi-cloud scenario, but not limited to that. We wanted to make sure that all of these infrastructures, on-premise and in cloud, is secure, very important, and providing best practices or cloud practices to help people. So that said, I want us to now give Cole a few minutes to talk a little bit about Arc. Okay, over to you, Cole.
All right, thank you. Let me share my screen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can.
All right, thanks everyone. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone who joined the session. Right, so let me talk a little bit about Azure Arc. Right, so Azure Arc is a central control plane to security via the Microsoft Defender for Cloud. Right, with continuously monitor the security posture. Right, it visualize, analyze, and respond to monitoring data and events via Azure Monitor. In addition to that, Azure Arc auditing resources using Azure Policy, right? And Azure Arc also gives us a powerful way to track changes, inventory, and even software updates and patches. Right? So let me show you a demo recording that I recorded, right? So in this demo, I'm going to show you how powerful Azure Arc is to help us manage the, for example, our Azure Stack HCI cluster, right? So here I have a Azure Stack HCI cluster called HCI, right? So I'm going to zoom in into the node 1 of this cluster and show you what you can do with this node, right? So let's take a look on Azure Security Center. Now has been rebranded as Microsoft Defender for Cloud, right? It shows the overall security posture of my monitored environment with a secure score and provide the recommendation to improve it, right? And secondly, we take a look on policy menu. It shows the compliance stage of my monitored environment. I can click on the non-compliant resources, for example, to understand more about the compliant detail and recommendation on how to improve it to be more compliant as per the setting. Right. So moving forward, I will take a look on log analytics. Right. We can enable log analytic feature to visualize, to analyze, and respond to monitoring data and events. Right. Speaking of the performance data, what I can also do is I can use Azure Monitor to have an overview on the resource utilization of my server. As you can see here, I can actually run query to actually filter on some of the resources usage in my cluster. Right? And at the same time, I also get a dependency map, right? To have an overall understanding of the incoming and outgoing traffic and so on, and of course the resource utilization as well, right? And from this connection map, right, you can actually have an overview on which client is actually connected to the server that I currently monitoring, and where are the traffic does this server actually going. For example, you can actually drill down to a specific port, for example, right, and to have an overall understanding. All right, so this server is currently connecting where, right? As for you can see here, it's actually connecting to the Azure portal, right, to the Azure Arc Gateway, right, for example, right. And yes,
Can I ask
yes,
a question? Does that mean that if let's say there is a hacker that has somehow breached our fortified multi-layered security and is connecting to one of your servers, we will be able to see it?
yes, correct. Because all
Amazing.
incoming and outgoing traffic will be actually showed up in the heat map style, right? So you can actually monitor all the so how to say that the connection, and the administrator will be monitoring that somehow why this connection seems to be not as per our rule configuration. It should not be exist, or it seems to be connected for a long period of time, where normally certain ports will be maybe a couple of minutes or a couple of seconds, where somehow there's some port that seems to be connected as more than usual, more often, and that will be actually trigger a warning state or some notification to the administrator to actually take a look on that. So the heat map view is really a very good place for administrator to have a overview understanding on this entire monitored infrastructure.
Fantastic. All right. Please continue.
Yeah. So in addition to that, I also get the change tracking capability on software, files, services, as well as registry, right? And I also get a software inventory as well, right? So I can see there all the applications which are already installed, and also the Windows services status as well, right? And last but not least, I will also need to make sure my environment are always paged to the latest, and I will making sure that the server patches assessment actually run according to my configuration, and I can actually plan for patches deployment by scheduling a policy to deploy it accordingly. Right? So I think that's all for me from the perspective of the Azure Arc on how we can use it to manage our environment within single pane of glass. Right? Thank you, and over to you, Noah.
Awesome, Ko. Thank you so much for that sharing.
Okay.
All right. When you get a chance to, maybe you can swing back in and show us the Azure Arc deploying the template from the Azure Marketplace as well.
Yeah, sure.
So let me just quickly. So from the earlier piece that I talked about, the software assurance benefit. So obviously there's a nice big tick. All right. And of course, the demo that Ko showed you on Azure Arc Management, right? And he will circle back later to give you that announcement, excitement, all right, to be able to deploy templates from the Azure Marketplace. Now, some of you might be wondering, why is the Azure Marketplace so important in the role of deploying something on-premise? Now, those of you who've been managing systems on-premise, a lot of times you will have seen that the progress from setup to production requires a step called hardening of the service. So if you had a template that is already pre-hardened, following certain compliance requirements like ISO standards and so forth, you will then realize that you can actually accelerate the deployment of service into production much quicker that way. Right? So that's the reason why I felt that it's important to provide an insight on how customers can leverage that, simply because they're taking advantage of Azure Arc, right? And of course, the other piece that I find that is very compelling for a lot of customers is the ability to take advantage of the latest version of Azure HCI, 22H2, we call it. Now, before that, I just wanted to take two steps back, because as we talk to customers, many customers today are very familiar with what we call the 3-tier architecture, meaning there is the hypervisor tier, there is a storage fabric tier, which means this is the networking that's connecting to their storage. It could be a SAN, could be a NAS. All right. So these 3 tiers, if you want, are what they have worked with, they have lived with for many, many years. But in the last 10 to 12 years, we have seen solutions like HCI taking a very aggressive forward motion to help customers simplify the environment. Merging the storage, the network fabric, the storage fabric, and the hypervisor together, we can have like a 4-node as shown in this particular slide. And of course, to make that possible, you need the software-defined storage capability. From Microsoft, it's called Storage Spaces Direct. All right, and combining that gives us ability to hyper-converge if you want, right? As the name says. But some customers obviously also need software-defined networking. And through software-defined networking, they can use the built-in software load balancer, the distributed firewall, and even the network controller and so forth to manage a multi-tenanted environment. So this gives the customer a very powerful way to deploy amazing high-performance solution from Microsoft using Azure Stack HCI OS. So that means you can use local drives. How about that? You no longer need to have the drive sitting outside. You use the drives inside the server to do that. And obviously, the solution from Microsoft doesn't stop there. The exciting part is using a free tool called Windows Admin Center from Microsoft, you are able to reach out and touch those capabilities that Ko talked about. Like he talked about the Defender for Cloud, right? He talked about Azure Monitor. He talked about update management. And I'm sure if time allowed, he would have also talked about Azure Backup, Azure Site Recovery, and even Azure File Sync. But for all intent and purpose, we're just going to limit that, right? But you know what? Azure is unlimited, right? It's a hyperscaler, as we call it, all right? And very importantly, he touched on Azure Arc on the far right of this particular slide. And if you look at the center of this slide, there are a whole bunch of different types of workloads, virtual machines running Windows, Windows Server, Linux, all right? And of course, we have Azure Kubernetes Service, which is a PaaS service coming in from Azure, which is the one that the software assurance give it to you for free. All right, and of course, we also have Azure Virtual Desktop that will run on the on-prem environment. In fact, even among ourselves in this organization, we've been using it quite extensively to allow people to access certain systems and so forth. So this provides an amazing platform for a lot of different services, from containerization to cognitive services, data services, and regardless of what software development platform you may be using, whether you're using .NET or using Python, Node, and so forth, you will be able to take advantage of this. But let's come back to Azure Stack HCI. Azure Stack HCI really lives natively on-premise in your data center, in the customer's server room, in the customer's data center. And that said, you can leverage in an on-premise environment with Windows Admin Center that installs itself even in a Windows 10 or Windows 11 client PC or laptop. If the customer wants an overall cloud view of a massive distributed environment of Azure HCI, I highly recommend that they look at Azure Arc. Because truly, Azure Arc, together with even now Windows Admin Center in Azure, gives us possibly one of the best tool set, if you want, in order to help customers manage across multiple geographies and so on. Now, some of you may have been patiently waiting for 22H2, and when it was released in October, you got busy, right? Coming to the last quarter of the year. Now, there's been a lot of new capabilities added. One particularly that is transforming, especially from a networking perspective, is the Network ATC version 2. Now, the version 1 was introduced in 21H2 last year. Now, what's so special about ATC version 2, if you want, is these bullet points here. I think the one that excites me most is the network symmetry. It allows you to make sure that all the network adapters in the physical host are configured correctly so that there's no problems connecting among themselves on the east-west traffic. And even when it goes out to users and so forth, when they are coming in. And of course, it also helps us with the stretch cluster support. Now, in Azure Stack HCI first version, we call it the 20H2. We provided the ability to stretch the cluster. That means 2 nodes on one side and 2 nodes on the other side. Good news is you don't actually have to start with 4 nodes. You can start with 2 nodes on the primary side, and in the next phase of your project, you then add another 2 nodes in the remote side to give you that stretch cluster. Right? Both scenarios are supported. Scenario number 1, you can start with 4 nodes, 2 nodes in site A, 2 nodes in site B. Scenario number 2, start with 2 nodes, and 6 months later, a year later, when the customer has the plan ready to execute, set up the second 2 nodes for the stretch cluster scenario. So there's a whole bunch of good stuff that is available. All right, I don't want to get snagged into just that one slide, but there's also good stuff around storage replica. The compression allows to reduce the amount of traffic, although it uses a little bit more CPU, right? Meaning now the replication of the volumes is more effective, utilizing the limited bandwidth and limited networking that typically customers suffer from, right? And therefore, this helps the customer save money. Now, ultimately, it's all about doing more with less. If anything, from the start to now, you may have heard me talk about, oh, software assurance, customers who have invested now get this for free, they get that for free, and so forth. So it's about doing more with less. Now, the other aspect is also improvement around Hyper-V live migration. Now, most of you probably know that Hyper-V is a built-in hypervisor in Windows Server for the longest time. We first introduced that in 208, 28R2, but we have come a long, long way since then. It's still available in 2022, but Hyper-V is also the hypervisor that lives inside Azure Stack HCI OS. And with Azure Stack HCI OS 22H2, we get a much better, faster improvement from when you live migrate a VM from one host to another host. And this is something that majority of our customers have been really, really looking forward to. Because a lot of times they may have hundreds of virtual machines running on each host. So if they need to shut down a particular host for maintenance, they need the live migration to happen seamlessly and quickly. The other scenario is when they need to do patching. So that's where the cluster-aware updating comes in. With the patching, they get the ability to evacuate a node after all the virtual machines been live migrated across. That's why I put those 2 capabilities together. All right, and then they will patch the machine, reboot it, brought back into the cluster. The VMs from the other nodes move over, and the next node will go through the same process, followed by the next, and finally all the nodes will go through one at a time. And by the way, in 22H2, they also made it possible to do cluster-aware update with a single node deployment. Okay, let me repeat that. In a single Azure Stack HCI node deployment, cluster-aware update also works. So you must be wondering, wow, how is that possible? Stay tuned. In future sessions, we go into the guts of it to share with you. Now, the next area that is particularly important is the thin provisioning. So for the longest time,
有我在用它的 setup 那个SingPass。
Jason, I think you should mute your phone.
For the longest time, all right, we have always had the ability to do what we call fixed provision, or some people call it thick provision. Okay, that means it will actually consume actual storage within the Azure Stack HCI environment. So with this release, what customers are able to do is they use, or they will only consume what they are using. That means allocate what they are using, meaning what they are not using is still made available for other volumes to use. So that gives us the ability to do more with less again. All right, now, as I mentioned, there is the ability to have the one node. So what's so exciting about the one node? The excitement really is about customers who are now trying to take hyperconverge out into the edge, into scenarios where once upon a time probably would never in their mind conceive that it's possible. It could be in the retail perspective, at every supermarket, right? It could be for, how to say, the industries like what they call the rubber plantation like in Malaysia, or the oil palm plantation, where they have remote offices that has got intermittent connection to the internet. That is not particularly great, but they do have some form. And they want to be able to collect data. They want to analyze data. So the AI, machine learning, the GPU support all become very important. So in 22H2, we give customers the ability to do the one node better than before. Why? The likelihood of a customer scaling is always going to be there. So we don't want the customer to feel that they are stuck with a single node because they started with a single node. We want them to be assured that they can go from one node to 2 nodes to 3 nodes and grow up to the 16 nodes that they need to. Or with Azure ACI, we can even cluster multiple sets of clusters of clusters if you want. That's what hyperscaler can do, right? So Microsoft effectively has brought hyperscaling capability from Azure down to the on-prem environment for customers. And last but not least, in this slide is the tag-based segmentation. That means within your network segments, right, you can tag them so that you can search for them, you can assign priorities and so forth. So these are all important capabilities that customers can be able to enjoy, right? Amazingly, for free as well, if you have Windows Server Data Center with software assurance. Now, some of you might be wondering, Noel, you keep talking about Azure. Is it really that good? Well, you know what? I feel for you if you don't know how good Azure is, but Gartner does. Gartner, one of the leading analysts, says Azure is one of the top hyperscalers in the world. Not surprising. That's why they made into the leaders quadrant. So there are 3 companies, as you can see, in the leaders quadrant. So this top right corner is what we call the leaders quadrant. And in there, you notice that Microsoft is among the leaders. Now, let's understand this Gartner Magic Quadrant a little bit. On the x-axis, we have the completeness of vision. What does that mean? It's about capabilities. It's about all the richness of services, whether they are infrastructure as a service or it's a platform as a service and so forth. How complete is the vision of Microsoft? In fact, it has just crossed over, nudging AWS out of the way, pushing them into second place. That's why if you measure it correctly, Microsoft is actually slightly ahead of AWS. Now, how about the y-axis, the ability to execute? And that's where AWS truly has a lead, quite a strong commanding lead. Now, if you dig into a bit of history, you will understand that the reason for that is because AWS came out with public cloud ahead, a couple of years ahead of the rest. And therefore, they have a lead. But you know what, though? If you look at some of the more recent stats around who are the ones leading, you realize that Microsoft is growing faster than AWS. So I believe if I were to pull my glasses of the future, you will probably see that Microsoft will catch up within the next 1 or 2 years to what AWS is today. So that's the good news to it. But the other one that I think is even more relevant is the voice of customer, what we call the PI for HCI. Now, a bit of a tongue twister there, isn't it? So this voice of customer is about Gartner reaching out to customers belonging to Microsoft, belonging to all the different brands that is in there and beyond, and see where customers find value to the solution. And they discovered that when they dig into this customer database and they start talking to customers, customers had some amazing feedback and review. And not only that, they're willing to recommend, meaning that they feel so good about the solution, they have personalized it as a recommendation to others. And just in case that you may think, hey, you know what? We are in Asia Pacific. No one cares about this part of the world. That's not true. In the Gartner reach out to customers, 46% of them came from Asia Pacific. That shows how important we are in this region. Almost half of the customers who stepped forward came from our region. In fact, we have some case studies that if time allowed, we would have shown you. And that said, I want to bring Cole back in to show some preview, sneak peek, if you want, of the latest and greatest of Azure ACI 22H2. Cole, you there?
Hi,
Yeah.
Noel. Before you call take over, we have a question, by Konya Wan.
Yes.
Asking, to deploy 1 or 2 node Azure Tag HCI, do we need Witness or Quadrum node outside the cluster?
Yes, we do. Definitely we do. All right. The one node, especially because it's a remote site, right? The likelihood that they have something that they can set up as a witness will probably be very rare. So what they can do is they can use the Azure Blob Storage or aka Azure Witness Service, in order to achieve a second data center or third data center, depending on how they look at it. Right? Definitely all those plumbing, if you want, for a highly available environment have always been there for the longest time. So the answer is yes to that. Okay, thanks, Lorraine, for bringing that up. So over to you, Cole.
Yeah, let me share my screen. Right. So
Thank you.
first of all, yeah, I will demonstrate how we can actually deploy the virtual machine directly via the marketplace, as shown by Noah just now. This is one of the new capability that's available for 32H2. Right. So basically, this is my cluster, and I actually manage it via the Windows Admin Center on premise. Right. So as you can see here, this is a 2-node cluster, and I'm actually managing it here. Right. And from here, I can use the Windows Admin Center to actually manage the virtual machine, manage the server, and so on. Right. And not limited to that. Right. So once the server has been converted to Azure X Arc-enabled server, I can actually manage the cluster directly from the Azure portal. Right. From here, I can actually have the overview of all the cluster after the onboarding process. Right. From here, I can take an overview of the overall performance for my cluster as well. Right. From here, I also have a panel to actually manage my virtual machine. For example, my virtual switch, the disk that actually attached to the services, right, and also the virtual machine images, right. This is something very special now because the new preview release actually allowing us to actually add the virtual machine image directly from the marketplace. Right. So as you can see here, I already have 3 images that actually are added into my local storage, and from here I can actually how to say that, add the new image directly from the Azure Marketplace. How to say that? How simple and how to say that, easy and convenient for the administrator to actually deploy a certain image that directly from the marketplace. And from here, what you need to do is you just select the resource group that actually where these cluster are seated, and the image, right? The name for the image that you're going to deploy. For example, I wanted to select the Windows Server 2022 Azure Edition, for example, right? And from here, right, you can actually specify a custom location. But for me, I actually name my location as a core DC, for example, right? And I want to deploy that, right? So from here, you can actually directly to deploy this particular image into the Azure Stack HCI, right? Because the marketplace image currently only available for East US and some of the European region, right? Is currently still not available for our tenant, which is currently sitting in Southeast Asia, right? So this is one of the very good features that are actually helping the administrator to actually provision the VM directly using the image that provided by the Azure Marketplace. Right. So let's move forward.
Go.
Yes.
Before you jump forward, right? So
Yes.
if we can't use a template because we are in Southeast Asia, right? So basically what you're saying is we can actually use the template if we are homed into another region, right?
Yes,
East
correct.
US, for example. Okay.
Yes, correct. Yes.
And
this is only the limitation for this Windows Server 2022 Data Center Azure Edition, right? Because this is actually a new version, right? So it's currently only available for some US and European region. Right? Hopefully, I think it will be definitely soon available, make it available for us in Southeast Asia. Right?
Yeah. And I think you are probably selecting this particular version, the Windows Server 2022
Yes.
Data Center Azure Edition, because you want the hot patching, right?
Yes, correct. Definitely. We wanted to try out the hot patch, the SMB overclick, and so on. This is the latest and greatest new capability that actually excited us a lot. And this is why I wanted to try it out. Right?
Sure.
But
By the
not
way,
limited to
for
that.
those
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Just wanted to add a little bit on the Azure Edition. By the way, what hot patching basically means is when you patch a particular server, in this case, the server with Windows Server 2022 Data Center Azure Edition, you do not need to reboot that virtual machine. Okay, that's what they mean by hot patching. All right, so no reboot required basically means good news, there's no downtime. right? From a user perspective, there's no downtime to the applicant that's running inside. But if it's not the Azure Edition, on the other hand, maybe 5, 6, 7 times out of 10, they probably have to go through a reboot. By the way, those of you who don't know, Microsoft releases a scheduled release of patches on the second Tuesday of each month. The next second Tuesday is next week, right? So those of you who are not looking out for it, please check it out, because it's important for us to keep those patches current. But I always advise customers to test the patches before they deploy it. So having Azure Edition is actually a very good thing, because that requires you to patch, but you don't need to reboot, no downtime. You can have a set of test users hooked up to that particular system and get their feedback on what they think about their experience over a couple of months before you bring live into your entire production environment. Okay, so back to you, Cole.
Oh, that's really good. Right. So let's move forward and share a little bit about the single node cluster that now shared about just now. And this is a very good features that allowing the customer to deploy the cluster in an edge environment and yet have the capability to scale in the near future. Right. So this is a little bit of resources that is available for it about the difference between the single node deployment and the multi-node deployment, right? So I will not elaborate more on this further, right? So let's go into the demo directly, and I wanted to show you how simple is it to actually for me to actually setting up the single node cluster, right? And after that, I actually use the Windows Admin Center to actually manage the single node, right? So basically, as you know that the single node can will be deployed by using the PowerShell, right? So maybe some of the fast forward demo on this area, right? Right. So after the single node has been deployed using the PowerShell and has been deployed to the edge environment, right? We will basically use the Windows Admin Center to actually manage the single node cluster, right? And this is a web-based free tool that allowing the administrator to actually remote admin this particular cluster upon connection has been made, right? So from here, as you can see that I have an overview of the cluster that is currently running on the site, right? For example, right? This is a single node configuration, right? Let the screen to refresh a little bit, right? So for the dashboard, you can have an overview of the resources utilization for this particular cluster, right? That is currently running in a single node, right? You can, as you can see here, my server the number of server is 1, right? So this is say that this is a single node deployment, right? And from here, you can say that I just registered, I just installed the cluster. I haven't registered to the Azure portal yet, right? So from here, you can see that I'm actually running on single node configuration. And from here, you can actually configure some parameter to have a better understanding on, for example, the build number, the OS number that is running at the moment, right? For the administrator to have a better understanding about the version that is running and monitoring at the moment, right? Right, so you can adjust the column accordingly, right? So this makes it very convenient for person who actually administer the environment, right? Right, so after changing, you can see that, okay, this is my single node and what is the version that I'm currently running. So what is the build number? So whether there's any update is available, right? Available out there, and I will plan it accordingly, right? So now how great is that we can actually manage the single node cluster using the Windows Admin Center. Right.
It looks
And
like
of course,
child's play.
we can also use this Windows Admin Center to actually manage the volume that is available in the cluster, the disk, right? And of course, even in single node cluster, you can actually change the way that the disk has been grouped, right? So that in the near future, once you actually scale out by adding more nodes, right? And all the disk file will actually group into a node accordingly, right?
Awesome.
Right. So let's move forward. Let me show you some exciting feature that is provided by the latest 22H2. Right. One of the great feature is the the team provisioning conversion. Right? As you know that once the volume is created, let's say I have created a drive in a fixed provisioning. Right? How am I going to convert it using become a team provisioning drive? Right? From here, yeah, let's move back for a little bit. Right? From here, you can see that this is a fixed provisioning drive, right? Which is a 20 gig drive, and my footprint is 41 gig, right? So do take note of this. So I will actually convert the drive into the team provisioning drive, right, by using the PowerShell. Right. From here, I will still use the remote PowerShell that provided by the Windows Admin Center by connecting to the Node 1 remotely. Right. You see here, it's so convenient that you don't need to go to the PowerShell screen directly into the Node 1, for example. I can actually launch the remote PowerShell that remotely, right, for this Windows Admin Center tools. Right. So this create make the convenience for administrator that he or she can actually perform the same task within a single pane of glass. Right? No need to switch over to different screen or different tools and so on. Right? So from here, I want to show you that this is I check what is the current this provisioning status for the current drive, right? And now at the moment it's fixed drive, right? So I run a PowerShell script to actually convert them, right? This is a new capability that provided by 22H2, which allowing you to convert the drive from fixed to team, right? Where previously you need to how to say that you need to suspend the entire drive, you need to copy the drive out, copy the file inside out, and actually delete the volume and recreate the entire volume. Right now, you don't need to do that. Right? You can use it by using the PowerShell to actually convert the drive from fixed provisioning to team provisioning. Right, and after that, you just need to reattach the drive. Right, because the script will actually reattach the drive. So during the process of conversion, it helps to how to say that there's no activity is allowed because the drive will be actually taken offline. Right, so once the command is run and the drive conversion is completed, right? So let's go back to take a look again at the volume just now, right? Where our 20 gig volume, we have a 41 gig of footprint, right? So now we actually convert it into a team provisioning, right? So what are the footprint that we have now for our existing 20 gig of drive, right? Let's take a look, right? So still 20 gig, right? So let's take a look on the footprint, right? It becomes 13 gigs. So it's reduced and only scale up when as per your usage, right? So this is how powerful it is. This update that allowing the administrator to actually convert the fixed provisioning drive volume to actually to the team provisioning volume, right? Without need to how to say delete, remove the volume and recreate the volume, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah. Previously, you have to destroy the delete the volume and recreate it. Now you don't need to do that. You can just actually convert it using the PowerShell. And there's some more update, interesting update in the coming sharing. I show you something that really interesting. Right? So this is another update for HSA HCI 22H2. There is a tool called Environment Checker. Right? This tool allows administrator to actually validate the cluster connectivity. Right? It will actually help the administrator to actually diagnose the connection between the nodes and the Azure, right? Whether the Azure connection is in a proper scenario, whether the synchronization is okay, right? Whether the Azure Arc communication is okay, right? Where the status is connected, and what about the connectivity and the authentication between the cluster and the local Active Directory, right? This is something that the environmental checker will actually help to actually diagnose those network related issues, right? And in the near future, there will be more add-on to this environment checker on the hardware diagnostic, right? In the Active Directory object diagnostic and so on, right? There's more to come, right?
This is very
So-
interesting, Cole. This is very interesting because I think
Yes,
the networking aspect, like all hyper-converged solutions, tend to have a certain level of complexity that scares our customers. Right.
Yeah.
So the fact that we have this checker, I think that takes the worries and the concerns
yeah,
off
correct.
mind.
It's like the cluster validation tools during the cluster conversion installation, right?
Mm.
So the tools help you to validate all the required or components during a period of time that you are setting up the cluster. And this environment checker is a tools that allowing the administrator to run to diagnose whether there's any network connectivity issues between the cluster and all the connected points. For example, the Azure and the AD and so on, and whether the proxy is working properly as well. It's also part of the tools, the area that the tools will actually help to diagnose. Right?
Awesome.
So once the tools is installed, you just need to trigger the command. Right? Let me fast forward a little bit.
Sure, sure.
To trigger the command, right? It will run through series of tests, right? As I remember, at the moment it actually have about 55 tests, right? To various kind of connectivity component, right? So once the checking is completed, right, it will show you the result, something like this, right? With all the tick about do you have any proxy and so on. And from here, you can see that, right?
Very
Looks
good.
good, right? My server connectivity seems to be quite well managed and configured, right? I actually passed all the tests, right? Right,
Awesome.
and of course you can have more detail and so on, and there's also a report location where you can actually view the environmental checking the checker tools report, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And as an illustration here, I actually use tools provided by Microsoft. This is called CM Trace, right? I use these tools to actually open the environment checker log, the environment checker report, right? To actually have drill down to the individual logs for more detail, right?
That's good. That's good. For interest of time, Ko, I know you have
Yeah.
probably such a wide array of demos that you want
Yeah.
to cite our audiences, right? So
No
we're going
problem.
to switch a little bit and come to an end to the last few minutes that we have, right? So
Yes.
that was an exciting set of demos that Ko showed for Azure HCI 22H2. So what I wanted to end the day with is actually to give you an insight. In fact, we packed in a little bit more if time allowed. We thought we were able to do Azure Virtual Desktop. That looks like today is not the day, right? But the management of our environment and being in control is very important. So we talked about Azure Arc earlier. How about this Windows Admin Center that we talked about and you saw Ko showing it and so forth? Where's that today, right? Microsoft is always improving it. So the next version called 22.11 is on its way. All right, so currently it's in preview. So I've asked Ko to see whether we can get a sneak peek of what is coming. All right, as you can see, I've got the bullet points that is free. It's a browser-based tool. All right, it's great with Microsoft Edge and Chrome and so forth. It's also a tool that allows you to set up your clustered environment, configure it, operate it, and even connect it to Azure, right? So that's a powerful part of it. And of course, 22.11 comes with a whole slew of new stuff. So that's why I wanted to give Ko a couple of minutes just to wrap up, all right, on the Windows Admin Center. Ko, what do you think?
Yeah, can.
Awesome. Thank you.
So let's go for it. Right. This is the overview of the new latest Windows Admin Center 22.11. Right. I just installed it a couple of days ago, and you can see here I haven't activated it. Right. So I wanted to show you how does the screen look like, right, before you actually register the cluster into Azure. And there's some area of improvement like better visual design refresh, and also there's some changes on the location of individual component. As you can see from the screen here, on the left, the new one, on the right is a 2110.2, right? So some of the component has been moved to the location categorized in different category. And from here, there's some updates like where there's better visual design, right? Some of the design has been refreshed. And of course, there's new property page. You can actually have an overview about your cluster information, right? The cluster ID, the cluster functionality level. This is very important. Previously, you can only get this information by issuing a PowerShell, where now you can have a GUI interface to have all this information. How pretty, right? And of course,
Nice.
if you're looking for something, what you have no idea where is it, use the search. The smart search will
Right.
actually help you to actually get to the menu that you want. For example, I want to go to witness, right? I have to scroll down and drill down to very detailed location to get the witness. Right now, no need. I can search for witness. Even I want to configure the Hyper-V setting, I can type something. You see, I not even finish the V at the end. I only type hyper, then the menu already come up.
Thank you,
So
Cole.
this is something
Thank you,
that's
thank
really
you. I know.
interesting.
I know we can probably take it for another half an hour at least, but we kind
Yeah.
of on the 1 minute to the hour. So I just wanted to summarize this so that we can close for today. All right.
Sure.
And of course, it's been an exciting hour of Tech Talks. Right. So I wanted to re-invite you to come back. So in summary, right, we managed to do the announcements, the excitements that came out from Ignite 2022. And of course, we also touched on Azure Arc. We also talked about the AKS being free as part of the data center edition with software assurance. And of course, Cole showed you this. And I'm going to just preempt you. Next session we will sneak in a bit of Azure Virtual Desktop for you. So thank you so much for joining us for this session. We are on the hour. All right. So this is Tech Talk Asia. All right. Signing off. And before that happens, I just want to alert you. Today is the December 9th, session number 1. We have session number 2 coming up exactly 1 week from now. Okay. And I would like to also help you remember that the following Friday, all right, we will have session number 3. So we're going to give you a lot of rich content to help you. So thank you for the question on the witness. And so happened that Cole's demo also touched on the witness. And thank you so much from the team, right? From yours truly, from Cole, from Vic, from Lorraine. We've been very excited and we've been amazingly privileged to be here to share with you and to help you. We're looking forward to the next session. Take care and have a wonderful weekend ahead. God bless you.